Welcome, everybody out there, to the Believe in Michigan podcast. I'm Brandon Brown. I'm joined by Thomas Guynes. This is episode number 1. We're going to call this kind of the introduction episode. Talk about myself. Thomas is going to talk about himself. We're going to talk about the season. We're going to take a look at the schedule, take a look at some of Michigan's key players. And then as we get a little bit closer to game week, the opener, man, Thomas, by the way, we're 17 days away from the opener. That is crazy. Excited
Yeah,
about that.
time's definitely flying by, so I'm definitely looking forward to that opening game.
As we get a little closer to the Fresno State game, we will lock in a little bit on the specifics of that week. But as I said, I'll introduce myself first, and then I'll turn it over to the VIP, and you'll understand what I mean by that in just a minute. I am Brandon Brown. I have been on the Michigan beat now for 10 years, moved back to Michigan in 2014. Brady Hoke's last year was my first year on the beat, so that was when I got my feet wet. And then it's been me and Jim Harbaugh. I mean, basically, we were in lockstep the whole way through all 9 seasons of Jim Harbaugh's tenure. I thought I might be done. I thought I might be riding off into the sunset with the national championship, the 15-0 record, and kind of doing something else. And then I had this awesome opportunity to jump on this podcast with Mr. Thomas Guynes and the Believe Network, and I'm super excited about it. And the reason why I called him the VIP, I mean, he was number 75 in your programs, but number 1 in your hearts, right? That's Mr. Thomas Guynes, former offensive lineman at Michigan. Thomas, I'm pumped when they said, like, hey, we want you to do a podcast with a former player. I was like, let's do it, man. And linemen they always have the most personality, like always, right? Like that's not just a myth or like something you see a little bit.
It's definitely the fact, straight up truth. We are the most gregarious, we are the most athletic, and we are definitely the smartest.
There you go. I mean, couldn't have said it better myself. But Thomas, you played in the mid-90s, 1994 to 1996. Started, I think it's 20 plus games in the winged
Yeah,
helmet.
about three and a half years starter.
And then
offensive line.
all over the O-line. I think that's the coolest thing as I was reading about you and learning about you before the show tonight is you really did it all, which to me seems it's that was rare back in the day. I don't know if that was happening as much back then. It seems to be happening a little more now, maybe.
Yeah, definitely a little bit more.
Yeah.
One of the big things for me was what was key was the fact that I'm kind of ambidextrous, so I'm left-handed naturally. So I came in as a left tackle, and I want to say probably about in '94, we had some guys go down, and Les Miles was like, "Hey, we need for you to play guard." I was like, "I've never played guard. I've always been a tackle." But at the end of the day, it's all about having that opportunity to still be a starter, still be on the field, still most importantly being able to contribute to the team. So I've started at left guard, left tackle, right tackle. I've done everything except for play center. And then when I was playing arena football, yep, they made me play center. So I've never snapped the ball up into that particular point. But it was a really good experience for me. And what it taught me was that don't get so caught up in specificity, if you will, coming in as an offensive lineman. Left tackle was kind of that money spot, so to speak,
Yeah.
as you're protecting that blind side. But at the end of the day, all 5 guys are important, and that's the beautiful thing about offensive line. And I've said it on some other podcasts and different publications is that that's the team within the team. We are the only group of guys that never leave the field.
Mm.
So, with that being said, to be able to have that level of synergy and continuity between 5 guys, to be able to look at your guard. I remember Damon Denson and I, who played left guard when I was playing left tackle, would come up to the line and just look at each other, nod our heads, and then just go snap the play. We didn't make line calls anymore, and that was a really great part of our game, and it allowed us just to play that much faster.
Well, we will certainly get into that with Michigan's offensive line as we get a little closer to that first game. They've got a lot of new faces up there. Really 6 starters, left last year. With the rotation that they used, and so there is a lack of that, if you will, a little bit this year. I can't wait to talk about that with you and how that might affect them and how long it might take them to get going. But that's down the road just a little bit. We don't have a lot of time, obviously, with only 17 days until kickoff. But today's going to be a little bit of a broader look, and so we'll get into that. But I did want to ask you, though, as we are sitting here, I've mentioned it a couple times, just over 2 weeks away from the first game. What are these guys going through right now in camp, in fall camp? They've got 2 weeks left. I'm sure they're going hard. Coaches are trying to figure out the starters a little bit at some different, some are pretty much put down on paper and ink, but there's probably some in pencil still, and some that might not even be filled out yet. And Michigan's got a lot of new guys. The coaching staff's new. There's a lot of moving parts compared to last year. what would be the mindset just in general of a lot of these guys right now, 2 weeks away from the first game?
I would think right now, like one of the hardest part is like, who are we? What's our identity?
Mm,
You're just coming off a national championship, undefeated season. There are still a lot of high expectations, but obviously, and always, there's going to be those detractors. You guys lost so many guys. You don't have this guy. You don't have that guy. Who's going to be your quarterback?
mm,
Offensive line is still kind of a question mark. So all these things that are said, I think right now it's just about trying to find team. What is our nucleus? Who are we? Who's going to be the leaders,
mm,
not only in voice but also in play and their productivity, if you will. So I think those are kind of those questions that we're going to start seeing work themselves out. And obviously everybody's kind of chomping at the bit. I'm tired of hitting the same
mhm,
guys over and over again. So hopefully, um, as time gets to wind up. I think one of the things that's different from when I played, we're doing things a lot smarter. There's not as much contact as it used to be. I remember when I came in as a freshman, we had 3 weeks of two-a-days. You had a week just with
mm,
freshmen. Upperclassmen came in. We got beat up on by the upperclassmen. And by the time the season and stuff rolled around, um, you try to mitigate those things as far as the wear and tear. But that was just the nature of the beast nationally across the board as college
mhm,
football was played. As we have progressed, we're in a whole new century right now, basically trying to work smarter, not harder, if you will,
mm.
and try to do more with less. And what I mean by less is less physicality, at least leading up to the contest. So I think that's one of the things that we're looking at, making sure guys are healed up, getting the treatments that you need. But going back to your original point, it's all about, in my opinion, who are we? What are the expectations with what we have? And then who's going to step up and really be those leaders? And we're not going to know until that first 2 games, 3 games,
Mm.
if you will. But from this time on, that's when things really start to get ramped up, and looking for guys to kind of be the forerunners of the team. As, hey, I'm going to put this on my back and I'm going to carry us to the promised land.
I'm so interested to see really how that goes. You mentioned who the leaders are going to be. That's obviously the players. That's which guys are going to
Right,
you know chirp when they need to chirp and and practice the right way and not take plays off and look good
right.
on film and rep after rep and those kind of things. I'm curious though, and especially this year, even though he's not new to the program, but new in his role. I mean, Sherrone Moore,
Mm,
first time head coach, younger guy. Yeah, he did fill in for Jim Harbaugh last year multiple times and did a good job. But how much is obviously we talked about the player side of it, but how much of it is him taking the reins and being like, I'm the head coach now. I'm the new guy on the block. Yes, I've been
mhm.
here. My linemen know who I am, but this might be the first time some of these defensive coaches have heard him talk. I mean, like not literally, but day in
Right,
and day out, he's not spending a lot of time with the defensive backs as the O line coach. So
right.
it's different seeing him in front of the whole group, and now he's kind of running the show. You've got your senior leaders, you've got some younger guys who might be stepping up, but how much of this is Sherrone grabbing this thing by the horns and really putting it in the right direction for 24?
I'm going. I'm going to tell you why I think it's not that big of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take you back to Penn State
Yeah.
and what we did in the second half, and no passes and just punching guys in the mouth and run after run after run. And not only that particular game, I want to take you to the old state game. Lights are the brightest, pressure is the highest.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't flinch.
Yeah.
And I think when you really go back and look at those two games, in my opinion, those kind of cemented his coaching abilities and his ability to lead a team where we are under such scrutiny. Hell, we're still under scrutiny, right? It's for whatever reason, I really just kind of feel like we are the team to be hated um, in this time frame right now. But when you look at what Coach Moore did and his ability to not only keep control, stay focused, kept his composure, stay poised,
Mm.
and when, like I said, when the lights were the hottest and the brightest, and the pressure was the highest, he didn't flinch, he didn't crack, and I think a lot of that speaks volumes for who he is as a person. Now, to your point, okay, here are the keys to Ferrari. Don't crash.
Mm.
I think what he needs to do is have trust, and sometimes that's a really hard thing to I'm used to running the O-line. I'm used to being an offensive coordinator. Now I got to start having these conversations with the defensive coordinators and speaking to the other side of the ball, i.e., the defense,
Hmm.
special teams. I got to work with kickers now, making sure that we're getting our field goals and our PATs. So now instead of that one, side dish, the O line, or you kind of have that entree, but now you got to deal with the desserts and the appetizers. Oh yeah, and there's drinks, all that to come into focus and perspective, if you will. That's a lot. But at the same point in time, I believe because of the Penn State game and the Ohio State game, he has been tested to the
Hmm.
highest of tests. Now it's just about getting the reps week in, week out as the head coach and being that guy that's going to be standing in front of the podium. Either A, um, I suck as a coach, or A, we are great as a team. Because again, it all falls on his shoulders, right?
Yeah.
Any good coach that I ever played for, you never blame the kids, you never blame the team, right? Obviously, as the onlookers in the audience, or we can say, well, 75 missed that block, or 18 missed that pass, or whatever the case may be. It's a litany of things out there. We can always make these excuses, but as a head coach, you always stand up for your teams, and you let your guys know that I'm always going to be the first through the door.
Yeah. I mean, Sherrone, he's got the team's trust. I don't think there's any question about that. Just how
Correct.
good he's been as a position coach, and then what he did do last year, subbing in for Harbaugh at Penn State, at Ohio State, down the stretch in
Right.
the biggest games of the year. I mean, he had the biggest games of the regular season as the head coach, and he shined. He did well, and he's a good dude. He's funny. He's fun. The players love him. They've always said that about him. And you said, maybe a game or two, and then he'll really start to figure that out, or however it will go. But either fortunately or unfortunately, week 2 is a tough one, maybe one of the tougher ones on the entire schedule. Michigan does host Texas in week 2. They've
Mhm.
got Fresno State week 1, and even Fresno State, I mean, that's not a cupcake game. It's not. I wouldn't call it a tune-up or a cupcake game.
Right.
Michigan's going to be favored in that game by quite a bit, but that's a team that's put some good players on the field in the past, and they can play.
I'll take you back to App State. I'm
Yeah,
not
there you go.
I'm not saying that Fresno State is App State. App State was a team of legit D1 guys,
Hmm.
grades, behavior, whatever the case may be, brought them to App State. My point in saying this is that when you have a smaller school, a somewhat lesser known school, a regional school, if you will, they have everything to win. We have everything to lose
Hmm.
right now. Only thing that we gain from the Fresno State game is getting some game time reps, kind of seeing what plays are working, and hopefully what's also can be a detractor is the fact that we are playing Texas. Texas is going to come in. First of all, it's Texas, right?
Hmm.
It's where quote unquote football was created, and football is king in Texas. And the mere fact of how the playoffs played out
Yeah.
this past season, with them not getting into the playoffs. So I think they definitely have something to prove, that hey, if we were in that mix, we very well could have been national champions. So I think with some of the stuff I was looking at, that their quarterback may be out for the season for
Yeah.
them. So obviously we don't wish injury on any young man or any team, but with that being said, in my opinion, that's a bonus for us. But we I definitely feel, depending on how we play in that Texas game, win or lose, even if we take an L, but it's a hard fought game, closely contested game, I think that's going to speak volumes for us. And I'm not one of those guys, and um, you lose, but you win, so to speak.
Mhm.
I'm always going to be about the W, but I'm always going to be about learning from the W or the L. And I think that game's going to tell a lot about us
Mhm.
early on. Obviously, there's a lot of football left to play. We got 18 teams now in the Big Ten. So figure that out, make it make sense. But there's so many things right now that are up in the air, and it's just going to be a fun, interesting season to see how
Yeah.
all this plays out. Obviously, I think any 9 and 3 10 coming out of this particular conference has a shot at making it into the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think there's any question. Last year, I think that was about the cutoff, was like 10-2. If it had been 12 teams last year,
Right.
the 12th ranked team was 10-2. Right there at 13 was 9-3. But with the changes in the conference and the non-conference schedules, especially in the Big Ten for some of these teams, it's going to be a gauntlet for some of them, and I think Michigan's right in that mix. Um, Is Texas and Michigan the two biggest? Are those the two biggest brands in college football? Can you make that argument? Where do you fall on that? I think if you go around the world, another to completely other
I
countries, you might see the Longhorns and the Block M maybe more than any other school.
I would say Michigan globally
Mm-hmm.
because we're Michigan. Harvard is the Michigan of the Northeast.
Yeah,
So with that being said, globally, just because of our brand, what we do research wise, academically, and
medically, all that.
all of our sports across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Football, we've won the baseball World Series within recent history. Obviously, the Fab Five, hockey. There's a litany of athletic endeavors that we bring to the table. But again, like I said, one of the reasons why I came to University of Michigan is because of that Michigan degree, and we have such a global footprint, and we have the largest alumni association nationally. So all these things being said, I would definitely say Michigan's in that mix. Texas, I kind of think Texas is more of a regional thing.
Okay.
Um, they really haven't, as of late, been that team to really look out for. It's always been the Bama's,
Mm-hmm.
um, maybe Oregon or something like that, and Ohio State, unfortunately, but
Georgia. Yeah.
Georgia, it's
Yeah.
it's the SEC and the Big
Yeah.
Ten. I never really looked at the Big 12 as what the Big 12 used to be or the Big Eight, like back when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think Texas is starting to gain traction now, and I think it was huge for them to get into the SEC because them playing those SEC schools consistently further gives credence to their ability to be looked upon or ranked in that upper echelon of college football.
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah, I mean, college football is better when everybody that's supposed to be good is good. I mean, we
Right,
said that for years with the Michigan Ohio State rivalry. Like, man, it's better when they're both good, and there's a chance it
right.
could go either way. And Texas certainly falls into that as well. And yeah, you're right. They haven't really been there until this last season, and now moving forward, kind of on a better track it seems. So I always do this when I look at Michigan's schedule. In the years past, it's been about 3 games, 3 game
Hmm.
season every year. Michigan State was in
Right.
that mix for a long time. Wisconsin, you could throw in there sometimes. Iowa sometimes, and then
Hmm.
usually Ohio State and Penn State. Those are
Correct.
quote unquote losable games. Like that's a team. It's got talent, depending on where it's
Correct.
at. One weird
Yep.
bounce to the ball, and they can beat Michigan.
Correct.
I see 5 of those this year. I see 5 of those games this year being, again, quote unquote, losable games. The others, Michigan should win. They should roll out of bed and win. I mean, I
Hmm.
put it like that as simply as I can every year. We just talked about Texas. Then Michigan hosts USC 2 weeks later. They have to go
Hmm.
out to Seattle to take on Washington. Now, that's not the same Washington team that they played in the title game last year.
Right.
They're
Right.
very, very different. A lot of transfers, a brand new coaching staff, obviously. I like Jed Fish a lot, though, so
Hmm.
I think he'll do well out there. And then
Okay.
Oregon, who
Hmm.
may be the favorite in the Big Ten, even over Ohio State, and then of course Ohio State at the end of the year in Columbus this year, which is tough as well. So I see those 5 games as Michigan's entire season. Um, no disrespect to the other teams on the schedule, but like
Right.
that's
Right.
the season. That's Michigan's season right there.
I mean,
I
I
mean,
think if you go back and you look historically, so like you brought up Oregon, right?
mhm,
Oregon, old Oregon used to like beat you with a lot of speed on the
mhm,
outside. I think as Oregon has progressed, they have become a little bit more of a bruising team. But also, I think what they are starting to become and morph into is that well balanced combination. We can hit you with a streak route, or we can pound you up front to get the big Polynesian guys coming
mhm,
from, Samoa, Hawaii, things of that nature. And they recruit heavily out of the California, the Bay Area, South Central, things of that nature. So we're getting those speedsters, but we also got those big guys up front. And who knows? We can sit here and speculate all day, I guess is my point, and
mhm,
we can talk about the pros and cons. My biggest thing right now is focusing on what are the Wolverines doing? Am I
mhm,
bringing that attacking defense up front? Have we found a viable third down rush defensive end that I
mhm,
know is going to put pressure on the quarterback? I know we got Will Johnson out there on Will's Island that's going to do the job at the cornerback spot? What are our safeties looking like? Do I
Mm,
have linebackers that have great lateral range? Can they cover? Are they going to come up and fill that A and B gap when those running backs are coming downhill? So I think there are some questions that are still out there. But all these things to be said is what makes college football so fun.
mm,
I played in the league. I work for the NFL now. I'm like the uniform police. I'm a uniform inspector. Thanks, John Runyon, for the gig. But all that to be said, like when I look at the pro game, it's kind of boring. When I look at these kids play and the
mm.
passion that they bring, and there's so many X factors that goes into a college football game. It's the pageantry, it's the location, it's regional rivalries. Now, we got the playoffs here, looking for that standalone, solidified national champion. So all these things that are now coming into play, and then there's so many moving pieces with the transfer portal. Coaches are
Mhm.
leaving, players are leaving. So what does that all look like? Right now, it's a mishmash of expectations, and the only way we're going to figure this out is on Saturday. But the Wolverines have to focus on what the Wolverines are doing. We can't worry about Oregon and
Mm.
these other four teams, because at the end of the day, Fresno State is up first, and that's the business at hand. They're going to give us their best shot. What better way to start their season than to knock off the defending champions at
Man,
home?
they've been talking about that since the last season ended. That's been
Right.
right in the front of their minds. Going up to Ann Arbor, let's shock the world and make a statement to start the season.
And
Week
for us,
zero.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say week zero starts, and everybody's gonna get to see a little bit of football in about
Right.
what is it, 10 days, and then 17 days from now, Michigan will host Fresno State in that first game, that opener, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Is there a line out for that game? What do you think Michigan's favored in that one? Do you have
You know what?
a thought on that?
I never really got into the whole line and the betting thing because I never really understood it because I work for my money, so I'm just not going to give it away. But the other piece behind it too is this is what I'm looking for out of that Fresno State game. I need for us to press the gas early.
Mm,
I need for that game to be over by the third quarter, and I need to have my twos and threes in. And the reason why I want to do that is I don't want to give these guys any signs of life that, hey, we can hang with these guys, because I want us to start sending that message nationally and throughout the conference. Just because our other guys left, don't forget about the new kids on the block. We learned from them. We've been in the program. We understand the process. We put the sweat, blood, and tears
hmm
through this offseason, getting ready to defend that national championship and to stand alone atop the heap of college football. We have to
Mich
go out here and press the gas.
I've always wanted that. I mean, I remember even, and it got to the point where I was like, I just can't ask for this anymore. I can't complain. I can't watch a Michigan game where it feels like I want them to do more, throw it down the field more, go, faster, score more, and then you look up and they win by 28. I'm like, all right, I guess I can't really complain about a 28-point win, even if it
Right.
didn't have a ton of huge plays or a ton of splash plays. Like, and that's really been like the MO for Michigan the last couple of years. I've used this analogy so many times. I'm like, they're like a sumo wrestler, man. They just lean on you, and eventually they just throw you out the ring. And you're done. You've got nothing left, and they're up by 3 scores, and they go on to the win, and they do it the same thing the next week. And it's hard to argue that formula. And then especially last year, they win the whole
I
thing. So,
I think what a purist looks at is the attrition rate, right?
mhm,
As an offensive lineman, one of the most beautiful things in football is when you look across that line and you see that defensive lineman or you see that linebacker looking up at the clock, like, are we
mm,
done yet?
almost,
Because
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
because I just been beating the brakes off you all game. And when you finally take the will of that man across from you, the game actually becomes boring. And that's what we want. We want a boring game. Just
Fair enough.
watching us beat up on people. Because at the end of the day, what's it about? It's about getting the W.
Mhm,
And you look at some of the rule changes and all the different things, and everybody wants it to be fast and exciting because we're trying to make this game more of a spectator sport and talking about the things you talk about, those splash plays.
mhm.
But do splash plays win you games?
Not
Consistency wins you games. When
Mm-hmm.
you are able to beat up on people, when you go in as the opposing team coming up that following week and you're watching film and you're starting to get butterflies in your stomach because you know that you're about to line up against those big uglies on either side of the ball. When our linebackers are coming downhill and just smacking the hell out of the running back, bro, it's a beautiful thing. I've always called it, it's a symphony of violence, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to be the conductor, and we have to always be on the same page of music. I don't care if you like it or not. We're going to make you listen to it.
Yeah, there you go. So again, August 31st, 7:30 p.m. night game to start the season off against
Yeah,
Fresno in the big house. Michigan is favored by 21.5. So again, like I'm giving respect to Fresno because I know they put a decent product on the
yeah,
field. I know they can play. They've got some speed guys. They've always got a dude here and there that goes on to play in the
exactly.
league. But Michigan's expected to win that one and win by a decent amount. And I think that's, like you said, start fast, keep the foot on the pedal and put them away early. And people are going to be super excited. A night game in Ann Arbor, first game after the national champion, Sherrone Moore's first game as the
That's
officially as the
official.
head coach. Does that count? Do those games count on his overall record? The ones he won last year? Like, is he already 4-0 or whatever it is at this point, or will
I
he go
mean,
1-0 on if he wins that
I,
game on the 31st?
well, because those games are always going to be labeled as interim, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know how that plays out, but I always said this: a win's a win. When they were
Yeah.
talking earlier a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to snatch your national title, I was like, dude, I don't care. The
Mm-hmm.
world knows
Yeah. Yeah.
we went out there mano a mano and we beat your ass. And I've been having these debates ad
Yeah.
nauseum. Seems like, oh, well, you guys were stealing signs, whether we did or didn't. I don't know. I'm not here to speculate on that. But what I will say is this: what's different about the game of football is, if I told you, hey, we're about to run uh, a lead play to the left, and I'm telling you where it's at, you still have to stop the play.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to man up, stick your face in there, and and make the tackle, right? There's no magic in this. There's still the physicality of the game of football. And we, 15 games in a row, won that matchup of the physical battle.
Mm-hmm.
You can never take that away from us.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't care the pundits and the detractors. Well, Michigan did that. You know what Michigan did? We went out there and we beat your ass.
Mm-hmm. Week in and week out, and they're
Week
gonna
in and week out.
week
As
out.
boring as it was, week in and week
But
out.
winning's never boring though, and that's what I have. I
Right.
finally had to tell myself that I gotta stop. I gotta stop wanting JJ to uncork it 50 yards down the field. I just gotta stop, and he did that a little bit. But you
And
look up and
and so
a 28-point win feels pretty good. That's not boring.
and the meaningful part about it was what I loved about last year's team. Guys just stayed in their lane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the head coach for the Patriots for all those years,
Belichick.
I'm having a Belichick.
Yep.
Just do your job. If you do your job and he does his job, there's a high probability we're going to be okay,
His.
right? But when people start to work outside the confines of their responsibilities, that's when things start to go awry.
Mm-hmm.
And what we did last year, to your point, hey, well, why isn't JJ throwing it deep, and why aren't we, um, stretching the game out more? I'm like, dude, it's a game of first downs. Get a
Mm-hmm.
first down, and we'll go again. Okay, give me another. Hey, it's crazy. We're in the end zone. See how that happens,
Exactly. Exactly.
right? So, like I said, have fun with it, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily expecting a lot of variance of what we brought from last year.
Yeah, yeah. That's what Sherrone, O line guy. OC. He was the architect of a lot of that
Right.
stuff. So don't expect it to look a lot different. But Bill Belichick's son, Steve Belichick, the defensive coordinator at Washington, by the way, Michigan will get a firsthand look at a Belichick there in whatever week that is when they go out to Seattle midway through the season. So there
Mhm.
you have it. He is Thomas Guynes. I am Brandon Brown. That is episode 1 in the books. We will have. See, this is how new this is. We don't even exactly know. Is it going to be every Wednesday? Is it going to be a Saturday post game? Are we going to? We're still ironing all of that out. But I'm just excited to have a little bit of a space in this world and talk a little bit about Michigan football. And me and Thomas are going to be doing this all year, and I could not be happier about it. So thank you everybody for listening, Thomas. Thank you so much for the time, and yeah, we'll do it again whenever we need to. That's kind of how I'm feeling, right? Whenever we need to get on here and talk, that's what we're going to do. I think.
Hey, all I want to say is this: If you believe, I'm gonna believe, and at the end of the day, hell yeah, go blue.
There you go.